if you're like me and you're not sure what you're going to be watching next season, then a great place to filter that large volume of anime dropping on our heads is to stick to familiar territory. For me, that's the second season of Amanchu that I never expected to happen, but I welcome with open arms. As always, I'll try my best to give both sides to the argument as I recommend the first season of Amanchu. Usually, I start with a bit of context as to who's making the show, and the sort of works they've done before, and in our case with Amanchu, I feel as if the context is incredibly important to what the show is. Amanchu's manga was originally written by Kozu Amano, the same person behind Aria, which also garnered an anime adaptation spanning 3 seasons and 2 OVAs that covered essentially all of the manga. Aria was animated way back in 2005, and its last OVA was surprisingly in 2016. That's a huge gap, but not something we haven't seen before, considering with what Kino's 2017 adaptation did. Aria as a whole is an amazing slice of life show that does its job and does it damn well. But of course, this is an old anime with, again, 3 seasons, which might be a tall order for those that don't have time to marathon a show with about 50 episodes, since the second season was 2 cours. Even though I'd highly recommend Aria and consider it as one of the quintessential shows for a slice of life, even I admit to having trouble putting away time for marathons that aren't just 12 episodes. So that brings us to Amanchu, a JC Staff production. A work that takes a lot of inspiration from its predecessor, and although you don't need to watch Aria to appreciate Amanchu, I feel as if the 2 shows share so much in common that it would be criminal not to acknowledge Aria and its influences that came to craft Amanchu. And by the end of all of this, hopefully you come up with 2 recommendations of both Aria and Amanchu, since they are so similar. But of course, both shows have their own interesting quirks that set them apart, and one of them has to be the story. Amanchu begins with Futaba Oki, who moves to the town of Shizuoka, which I'm sure I'm not pronouncing correctly, for high school, and has a chance meeting with Hikari Kohinata. From there, Futaba is dragged into Hikari's pace, eventually joining the school's diving club. And that's essentially it. The story doesn't take any grand turns or has any huge problem to be solved. It's literally just, hey, you're new here? Cool, let's dive. Of course, this is a slice of life anime, so that lack of an overarching plot is expected, and instead, we get a more character-focused narrative where we follow the development of Futaba as she slowly assimilates into her new life and learns of the mysterious and beautiful world of diving. Although there is a lack of a larger plot, the story does in some way strive towards an ending, and there is still a very light focus that is pushed until the very last episode that wraps up the season very well and makes the show still worth watching with the development that happened prior. Not every episode pushes some larger plot, but every episode does lead into understanding either the characters or getting to an eventual end slate that holds the show together. It's a very light show with a contained atmosphere that never really derives from that and really holds itself true to the very end, which I really enjoy. It's supposed to be this lighter show dealing with these characters and how they come about in the world, but not in such a dark or gruesome way. And to achieve that meaning and development is the motif of diving. With many slice of lives, you're watching them expecting some kind of twist or interesting take of the genre to hook you in. Amanchu has diving as its main centerpiece that holds the show together. And for the most part, if you don't care about diving, then you might just drop the show altogether since there is, well, a good portion of this diving aspect. Although I didn't feel as if it was too in your face, but when they hit you with it, they really do hammer down that the show is based around diving. There's didactic episodes and scenes, but they're used in effect with the characters, and the greater use of diving actually extends more than just an activity that they do. I went into the show without really caring for diving, but from how they framed the activity and how they use it, diving became something I legitimately gained an interest in, and was glad they paired it so well with the actual story, almost making the act of diving a side character all of its own. That's what I really enjoyed about the construct of Amanchu, and I'm sure this holds true for many shows with a grounding motif. The diving is used in conjunction with character growth and development, enhancing the story by being a part of it, but not completely overshadowing it either. I could instantly see through the way they pair diving with how the story was going that it meant something more than a few people just swimming in the water. At the end of the day, Amanchu really sets itself apart by using that idea of diving to tell an endearing story of coming to terms with having to change and how to find yourself, taking risks and doing things to explore a world that has always been there but was something you never realized you needed to see. Futaba goes through this amazing journey of having to see who she really is, and the first step of doing that is taking a leap and diving into a world she never knew was right by with her. It's a very literal metaphor, but it worked really well, and the idea of exploring and being in this vast unknown world is something achieved only with the focus of diving. But it isn't just Futaba that makes up the show. The characters of Amanchu are another nice touch to the series, adding color and meaning to the overall experience. This show is very character focused and does well in giving each character their own time and space in the show, while also not rounding them off to a complete close and making them have actual impact to the story. They aren't characters that feel wasted, and we're given enough to understand who they are, but they recur enough that we can continue to build off of them. Their interactions are also very playful and really outlines who they are. These characters are really what ends up carrying the show for me, making it fun to watch how they interact, while also slowly building Futaba as a main character as well. Though I also warn that Futaba, being the main character, is kind of the one that's focused on the most. To that extent, the other characters surrounding her do a really good job of supporting her, but in the same vein, are not exactly given the same treatment of development that Futaba has. By the end of it all, I felt that Futaba was the one who really moved forward so much throughout the series, and that the other characters were still just kind of there, though not entirely forgotten. There was a strange balance, so if you do end up enjoying one character more than the other that isn't Futaba, then expect that their episode and time spent on them is probably all you're getting. Though that isn't to say that those episodes don't do much for them, and that they are constantly in the frame being active in the story either. Another big part of Amanchu for me is the amazing set pieces incorporated into scenes. These are moments where the animation or the directing is just tuned all the way up and is absolutely breathtaking. But these aren't just here to show off that JC staff knows what they're doing, but are actually moments that are well built and extend into some kind of metaphor or meaning implanted into the scene. This goes back to how diving is more of an extension of themselves and has a greater meaning than just an activity that they do. These are also likewise used very sparingly and only when the timing and narrative beat hits just right, so that when these huge moments of development happen, we are likewise hit with an amazing visual accompaniment. It makes these scenes stand out from the rest and easy to spot in the midst of the structure of their episodes, making the development and beats nice and easy to follow, but they're also just really nice touches that expands on the world and its general surroundings of water. This is a grounded story about people going to dive in the ocean, and there's a very naturalistic feel to the story, relying heavily on that feeling to make up the setting. In line with its light atmosphere, these moments of enhanced visuals and amazing set pieces work wonders to show off the world and all of its beauty, while also making sense in the sphere of the narrative. All in all, if you're inclined to a slice of life show that is able to balance its lighthearted atmosphere with actual development and meaningful episodes that are character driven, then Amanchu is your one-stop shop. It features a unique outlook onto a slice of life genre, setting it to the backdrop of diving, but also uses its diving extremely well in complementing what it wants to do rather than just shoving that down full stop. It's an enjoyable series with enjoyable characters and development that really made me stop and appreciate. There's no better time to catch up on Amanchu with its second season rolling around, so maybe give it a try.